AI applications are everywhere in the enterprise. Maybe these AI applications should belong on premises, running alongside all of your other applications with all of your own data. And maybe they should be on a platform that you already understand and that you're already staffed up for. This episode is supported by Broadcom and the VMware Private AI. Join us for all of the details. Welcome to the Tech Field Day podcast, where we bring together a group of IT technical experts to discuss a single idea about key concepts in the industry. This podcast features a variety of perspectives from members of the Tech Field Day community and is often recorded in association with our events. Tech Field Day is part of the Futurum Group, and this podcast is published on our sister company site, TechStrong TV. On this episode, presented by Broadcom, the idea we'll be discussing is that you already have the platform and the people to build on-premises AI. But before we start the discussion, let's meet who's on the panel today. Gina, it is so nice to have you with us again, and it's nice to have old friends.
Hi, I'm Gina Rosenthal, and I am a product marketing engineer in Austin, Texas.
Good to have new friends too. Jay, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Alastair. How are you this fine day or evening, wherever you are in the world?
Well, here in New Zealand, it is a beautiful, clear morning in early autumn for us. And Tasha, you are joining us from Broadcom. Whereabouts in the world are you, and what's your role?
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Tasha Drew. I run product engineering for the AI and Advanced Services group in the VCF division of Broadcom, and I am joining this call from, I think, kind of mildly cloudy Palo Alto, California.
And of course, I'm Alastair Cooke. I'm an event lead here at Tech Field Day. And Tasha was one of the presenters for Broadcom at AI Field Day 6, talking about VMware's private AI and how it fits within the VMware Cloud Foundation product suite. And I thought it would be interesting for us to talk about this move towards having AI on premises, or sometimes a desire to have AI on premises, because although the public cloud is a wonderful place to run things that you're not sure you want to use, like they say, it's a great place to fail, it's a terrible place to succeed, or it can be a terrible place to succeed. Building large-scale AI applications on top of cloud platforms is a great theoretical idea, but ends up being quite expensive at times, and sometimes ends up being rather inflexible. And being a long-time VMware person, having taught VMware training courses for 10 odd years and been heavily involved in the VMware community, that's how I made Gina as a friend. It seems to me that there is again a need for this pooling and sharing of resources that allows us to run a variety of different workloads on some sort of common platform, maybe a cloud platform that runs on premises. That seems like a sensible thing to do with our modern applications. Tasha, what are you seeing customers really doing? Because I think what I liked about your presentation at AI Field Day was that you brought in market survey information from real actual customer use cases rather than entirely relying on things that happened in the lab.
Yeah. So what we're seeing right now, just kind of across the industry, is a couple things. I feel like you gave me such a meaty topic that there's a bunch of different things we could kind of dig into there. One thing that we're seeing is that enterprises' cloud costs have gone up 30% year over year, driven by adopting AI and really starting to use AI in the cloud. And that is, and a lot of times when folks are starting to adopt AI, they really start doing their sandbox and testing in cloud environments. It's easy to get started. There's GPUs available. I just swipe a credit card and I can start to really rapidly experiment and prototype. But then they start getting the bill, they start taking use cases into production, they start having more reliable, predictable workloads. Suddenly the CFO is on the phone and he wants to know, hey, why is our bill so high? And they start looking at other solutions. Now that we've prototyped, now that we've experimented, is this a workload that we could bring in on-prem and have under cost control? So there's an element of just kind of predictable cloud repatriation, definitely. There's also just the long lead times to acquire GPUs that may lead to cloud first, on-prem later. But then there's also just rapidly experimenting, prototyping, being able to try out all these tools and services. And then once you realize what works for you, let's replicate and scale that in a place where we have stronger cost controls.
Jay, your perspective on sort of business management, cost control, data governance was one of the ones that also kind of swung into this. Running AI on premises sometimes is a necessity from a data governance point of view.
There's a couple of things inside of that. First, if you scroll all the way back to the beginning where we decided that IT costs should be contained, it is a reasonable thing to do. The next thing that occurred that the cloud provided us was all these operational expenses. So, hey, we don't have to go buy a bunch of capital intensive equipment and sweat that asset and appreciate it and amortize it. It's lovely, swipe the proverbial credit card. But of course, the controls, the governance, the guardrails didn't necessarily ship with that experience immediately. A lot has changed since then. I think there's methodologies, there's the technology business management methodologies, TBM, that has kind of vaulted into the world of a three-legged stool of there's the IT cost, traditional, then there's the clouder, SASE type of cost, and then there's the labor elements that, of course, with all of this amazing technology, we still need humans in the loop, or just humans to take, and care and feed for all the data pipelines that maybe haven't been fully evolved into a managed service. When we do all these things and we see the totality, it's a CIO, CFO view at that point. I think then you get to make these business trade-off discussions. And compliance is arguably more important now than it's probably ever been. What if cloud has the ability to make mistakes at scale? What mistake are we making that appears in print? And yes, you can weigh PR by the pound, but I think being associated with the wrong press coverage is very important for boards, C-level executives that do want to embrace this AI, this promise of AI. But I think the control element does still favor, even if you're doing, to your point, experimentation, dev, test, QA environments in a public cloud context. And there's probably some screening deals now. GTC is, I think, taking place as we're recording this. And so you can anticipate there will be provocative pricing offered by the large cloud service providers to kind of entice you, bring it over here. But I think for long-running, enduring workloads, it is still quite proven that a traditional AI on-premises or a machine learning on-premises architecture as part of a greater hybrid by design approach is probably a more advisable story than just going, quote unquote, binary all in on cloud or quote unquote binary all in on just private AI. So that's my thinking.
So your thinking is it depends.
It does depend. It does depend.
As predicted. But I think that's a really important element wherever we're getting into production deployment and large-scale adoption of technology. Use case by use case, there's right places to put applications for a variety of reasons, and some of them are financial, some of them are short-term operational. If I can't buy the latest and greatest GPUs, then I can't run the workloads that require those latest and greatest GPUs in my own infrastructure. But of course, we don't always need the latest and greatest GPUs, because that was an angle that Gina brought up as we were getting ready for this, is that not everything needs the latest Grace Hopper or the Feynman architecture that's coming in a few years' time. Lots of things run just fine without the latest and greatest, including DeepSeek.
Yeah, I definitely. I mean, people have been running AI workloads for a really long time, right? So I think a lot of the times when we think about the Grace Hoppers and whatever else will be announced this year by the different powers that be, we think about generative AI, or we think about, some really intense deep learning with lots of training and lots of retraining and lots of just lots of CPU power needed to do that part of the AI pipeline. But you don't need that for some simple machine learning things, right? So if you've just got some predictive AI, you're trying to figure out, well, if everybody lives in Austin, in this part of Austin, and there's so many crashes, then what do we need? How many crashes will there be, and how high does the insurance have to be? That's kind of my situation right now. So, but that already happens now, and it doesn't require tons and tons of manpower like like the like some of the generative AI things would need. And so I think just understanding what's the business problem that's being solved by AI, then you know what type of workload it is, then you know how to architect for it. And when you think about, I think about performance not just as the clusters of machines that we have or the platforms, it's also by the people. So the performance of the business is you're trying to get to a point where you can see predictively what's going to happen, how the insurance rate's going to go up, how the farming is going to go, all of these types of things. You may not need to go to a bigger model. And honestly, when you start looking at the labor, like Jay said, if you've already got a platform with people that understand how to architect and manage and control that platform, this is just a little stretch to help them understand another workload and understand how to do all the management and all the data hygiene things like protecting the data and security and all that kind of thing as well. And you might not have that um, the care and feeding for that typically doesn't go with the development teams. They're more the let's make this happen and let's get it done. And then it's up to the operations teams to stick it to the ground and make everything work in a performant way from an organizational standpoint. So I think, yeah, we don't have to do everything at once.
And I think you brought up some really important topics, and you and Jay, I think, are in a solid agreement that having people that know how to operate your environment and are familiar with that environment is one of the ways of significantly reducing cost and also enabling agility. It's really hard to move fast with something that you're unfamiliar with the first time you start using a cloud platform to deploy your applications. It feels very different to on premises. Tasha, as you're seeing customers deploying the VMware Private AI solution, are you seeing them starting with large language model predictive AI, or does there continue to be a lot more of the more machine learning predictive rather than the generative models being used?
Yeah. So looking at our customers, we have most of our customers have been doing machine learning, predictive AI for a long time, right? Like they already have that infrastructure. They're often already running it on VMware. The real difference is starting to look at private AI as our solution. That is really folks are coming to it from a generative AI perspective. They're very interested in creating agents. They want to create RAG applications. They want to open this up and be able to serve these capabilities from a platform perspective. Today, without a platform, you might end up with every team at your company running their own copy of Llama 3, right? Like you might end up with all of these different copies of models that a bunch of different teams are supporting, needing to procure GPUs for, not sharing with each other. But with a platform approach, you can source the GPUs, you can run the models as a service, you can have an API gateway in front of that, you can horizontally scale the models behind that based on demand, but you can run things in a much more efficient way if you have a baked in platform approach. And so really from customers, what we're seeing is a lot of really interesting use cases around scaling out generative AI assistance for their various industries, starting to think about how they could have assistants work together to have a true agentic workflow. Folks are really interested in RAG and just the ability to intelligently get data out of sort of the massive amount of documentation that every enterprise creates. But then they need to have strong privacy, security, RBAC around that to make sure that the right person is getting access to the right sets of data. So definitely interesting challenges from a privacy perspective, but having a nice baked-in platform approach that to the earlier points, you already have a team that knows how to manage, deploy, scale, and is now just stretching to a new use case is definitely very attractive for folks.
I really like also that API interface, or the API gateway interface to it, because one of the things that I see is a lot of developers who would like to have AI or are being told they have to sprinkle AI all over their application they're not actually data scientists. They're not people who are going to be able to write the prompts and understand how to tokenize their existing data to build that RAG solution. Being able to segregate that sets of skills and duty is going to be really useful. And I think another element for sort of the integration, Jay, you were raising was around some sort of universal interface for talking to agents.
Yeah, I think right now we're probably in what I would call the earlier days, but Claude, which people use, the company behind that, Anthropic, has been releasing certain things to the world. One of those is the notion of a model context protocol, and you could again think of this as a paradigm of secure two-way communication between different agents that one might have. And so, if I wanted to have one agent talk to another agent, security, obviously, to Tasha's point, top of mind. Defaults, the folly of defaults is that, hey, it worked, ship it. And then we learned that one of the examples that was shared yesterday at All Things Open for AI in Raleigh was, in a Canadian court of law, I believe. I am not a lawyer. Someone was they tried to cancel their ticket, and the LLM that was supposed to pull a rag and then tell them what policy was for getting a refund for their ticket said, "Yep, not a problem. You were refunded." And so through the glory of the court system, this company that tried to refute, like, no, we don't want to refund you. That actually is against our policy. Yes, but your rag in whatever system, whatever it connected to and whatever it communicated to actually did say, in fact, to that person, yeah, you're covered. No worry about it. We'll refund your money. And so I think we'll all learn some of these valuable lessons through, again, the news, because some of these spectacularly wonderful failures, and we must have failures. That's the only way we're going to get better. But some of those are going to be very instructive. And I think having something like MCP, this model context protocol, will allow for a greater de-risking, if you will, in the type of two-way communication we all want to see. We want to see agents talking to agents, doing things better on our behalf than we ever saw before. But to Tasha's point, much like BMW, it's not how fast you go, it's how well you go fast.
And I think another really significant element as we see production adoption is around governance and understanding the model history and making sure that we're not getting a lot of drift from in our models as they're being prompted. We've seen those, again, as Jay says, the disastrous things that happen with unfettered access for humans to these models. We can destroy things really well. Tasha, governance is central to the VMware Private AI. What sort of functionalities for governance are being delivered?
Yeah, so when I talk to customers, a lot of times when I'm talking to them about model governance, it really resonates, especially if they're in a regulated industry, especially if they have started experimenting with building their own models, fine-tuning or training them against sensitive data. They become very aware of how critical model governance is to them. But it's even important to folks who are just trying to pull a model, like a really well-trained model off the shelf, so to speak, from a model repository like NGC or Hugging Face, starting to have enterprise workflows for how to ensure that that model is properly vetted, security scanned, tested for appropriate model behavior, starting to have a stance in your enterprise about what is our risk tolerance around the model having problems answering this kind of question or this kind of attempted escalation, right? Like, and starting to kind of measure all of that and continuously test your models for how they're behaving against a series of prompts. All of that really feeds into this model governance story. And so what we have is a set of basic automatable capabilities that are part of the private AI solution. We have a model gallery. We've basically opened up Harbor, which is one of VCF's most popular open source donations to the Linux Foundation. And we've added the ability to store models in Harbor. The OCI specifications have been extended, so you can package and deploy models as OCI artifacts, store them in Harbor. Harbor within VCF already has the ability to do regular security scans. And then we also started to show our customers how to automate when they're pulling in models, but also as part of a CI/CD process, testing the behavior of the models itself using tools like GISCard. So now you can basically red team models programmatically and have one LLM try to get the other LLM to say the wrong thing or say something outside the boundaries of what you as an organization are comfortable with. And then you get a really nice automated report saying how your LLMs are performing against that. So you can use that to validate the models that you're importing from outside. You can use it to continuously validate the models to ensure that model behavior drift isn't happening. And then this is all baked into the platform as automatable against your own software release processes. Once you then store the models in Harbor, we have a nice automated process that's exposed via CLI where once you want to import or store a model, you can use our CLI. We'll bundle it up as that OCI-friendly artifact. We can attach tagging, you can attach tagging, and then you store it in a model gallery that's only shared with the appropriate people. So if you have a model that's just for a small group of data scientists to test and experiment with, that would go in their private gallery. But then if you have standard models that you're very comfortable with the behavior of and you want to provide to large teams of people, you can then have public galleries. So just kind of adding the basic capabilities in the platform to make sharing, deploying, validating, and testing models part of your regular practice.
I really like that, Tasha. That is really cool to have that model governance built in. Not only that, but have it as part of Harbor and have it part of the CI/CD pipelines, all the rest of it. So, when you get back to talking about the performance of the teams that are using it, already, your ops team is good to go because they stretch a little bit, they understand the workload, but this helps bring in the other teams that are responsible for the work for using the model and training the model and all the other parts of that to make sure that, if you had to pass an ethics test, my podcast partner that's what she does. She does ethical AI and does those kind of reportings for IEEE. But yeah, if you had to pass a test on, okay, you're doing AI for medical or you're doing AI for the government, let's make sure like these processes haven't harmed anybody or that they're actually doing what you said. And this seems like you said there's reporting, like that just seems really good. And you go back to the people performance piece of it. You're not learning a whole bunch of new stuff. You're just learning how to automate it, which is great.
We could spend hours discussing this topic and preferably over a meal or a drink somewhere, and we will carry this conversation on. But thank you all for joining us today at the Tech Field Day podcast. And before we go, where can people connect with each of you in order to carry this conversation on? Social media, websites? Where can people find more about you, Gina?
Best place for me is LinkedIn. It's LinkedIn. Gminx is what you can find me under on the URL, or Gina Rosenthal. Just search for me.
And Jay, whereabouts can people connect with you and have some interesting conversations?
You can go to my blog, fudge.org, my daily newsletter, hot.fudge.org, or like Gina, you can find me on LinkedIn as well.
And Tasha, where can people find more about you, what you believe in, how the private AI is working and Cloud Foundation as a whole?
Yeah, so we have a great VCF blog series that's really digging into private AI and how to automate and create all of these capabilities. So definitely recommend checking out the VCF and private AI blogs on the VCF blog. And then I'm also on LinkedIn and it's just /Tashi, so Tasha, but with a Y instead of an A. Yeah.
Nice. Getting a nice short handle that often requires that sort of manipulation too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And of course, I'm Alastair Cooke, and you can find me online as Alastair Cooke on LinkedIn. You can find me as DemitasNZ as my social media handles, also demitas.co.nz for my own site. You'll find me also at the Futurum blog as well, or the analysts elements on there, and periodically some of the places over on TechStrong TV. So thank you for listening to this episode of the Tech Field Day podcast. If you enjoyed the discussion, please subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast application so you don't miss a single episode. do consider giving us a rating and a really nice review. This podcast was brought to you by Tech Field Day, the home of IT experts across the enterprise and a part of the Futurum Group. For upcoming events and more episodes, head to techfieldday.com/podcast or view us on Textron TV. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.